Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey, and today we will be doing my worst books of 2025. So I guess we should just get the typical warning out of the way. I don't care if you love these books, just like you should not care if I hate them. We don't have to agree. We could still be friends. If that's going to bother you, please leave the video right now. I do not feel like arguing with people. 2025 was probably the year that I felt like I read the most average books. Definitely between 3s to 3.5s was the absolute monolith of ratings I read for the year. But amongst those, there were a lot of reads that I did not enjoy. We're going to start off with my two disappointing reads of the year. These are more like honorable mentions because they didn't get under a 3 stars, which is what I would consider to be a bad book to be included on this list. Again, bad is subjective. Just because you like the book doesn't mean I think of you as a bad person. Blah, 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 blah. Okay? So the first disappointing read I had for the year was actually like a 4 stars, but one of the more disappointing reads I read for the year was Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. This is a story that follows 3 different timelines, one in the 1500s, one in the 1800s, and one that takes place in 2019. And it follows 3 different women as their lives start to coincide. Honestly, when I finished this book, I just felt this sense of emptiness afterwards. I really did enjoy the overall atmosphere of the book, and I think that that is the number one selling point for this book. V.E. Schwab is very good at placing you in a specific time frame and in a specific character's mind. I love vampiric novels when they discuss specific themes in relation to gender and gender identity when it comes to having this power over another gender. But my biggest complaints for this book was definitely the overall pacing. I found it to be really, really slow. I also found it to be really long, and I don't necessarily know if that would have been necessary. There is one perspective in this book that I definitely think could have been cut. I did not find their purpose in the book to be that necessary, even though they play a larger part in the ending of the novel and a larger part in both of the other 2 timelines and the other 2 characters. It also did not make sense for the lore that we're meant to understand and the age at which these vampires are. So without getting into spoilers, I just felt like one part of the book, 1/3 really, was unnecessary, and also their placement within the other 2 characters' lives was also unnecessary. I don't feel like it really came together in a way that made sense for the power at which the 2 older vampires would have had in regards to these younger vampire. I hope that sort of makes sense. If you read the book, you can get it. I'm really open to discussing if maybe I didn't understand one character's purpose in the novel and how they were able to deal with the more powerful vampire. If you've read this book, please let me know. Help me understand that, because I found that to be a very disappointing ending for the grandiose nature of what this book was really tackling. V. Schwab is one of my favorite authors. I absolutely love the Darker Shade of Magic series. So they are an author that I often give 5 stars to, which is why this 4-star felt so disappointing to me. The last book on the disappointing list, the honorable mentions, is another author that I absolutely adore. I've often given their books 5 stars, including the other book in this series, We Love You Bunny by Mona Awad. This, I'm going to be honest with you, I think I definitely would have given a lower rating if it was not this author. This is the prequel sequel to Bunny, and Bunny is a dark academia novel that follows this graduate student in a creative writing program named Samantha, who feels lonely and left out in regards to this group of girls within her MFA called the Bunnies. They are a very close clique. They have these creative soirees where they're able to master the creative writing field, and Samantha feels very alienated from them. And this is sort of looking at Bunny from an outside perspective, or outside of Samantha's perspective. So it really pained me to give this anything but a 5-star, because Bunny is my favorite Mona Awad book. It is a book I think about often. I even reread it last year and gave it 5 stars. And I do think I really understood what Mona Awad was trying to do here, given the popularity and rise in popularity that Bunny had. And I think the point of the novel is creative visions taking on a mind of their own, and the authorial intent paired with the need to kill your darlings once they become popular, blending it with this romantic ideology and this idea of creation a la Frankenstein. The literary sarcasm and the wit towards creativity and towards narrative structures did make me giggle, especially because I too have an English literature degree, so these types of discussions and commentary will make me laugh. However, I did feel that everything that I loved about Bunny and the sharp, witty commentary from Bunny was missing in this one. There was no nuance to the metaphors I found. There was no descent into madness that had me questioning what we were reading, what was real, what wasn't. Nothing in this felt subtle at all. I really feel like Mona Awad was trying to hammer in her point, like into my head, bashing me with this book. And she like wants me to hate it, or she wants people who liked Bunny to hate this book. Like, I think that is the purpose of it. And I kind of like that, but I also hated the reading experience of this. I was so bored. So like I was very conflicted because I like the creative idea of the book, but I hated the reading experience of this so much. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. But I think if I read this just on its own, unrelated to Bunny, from a different author, like this wasn't going to be a book for me. And now we can officially get into like the worst books of the year. Again, this is all subject and relative, okay? So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Lark and the Wren by Mercedes Lackey. This is the first book in the Bardic Voices series, and I read this for the r/fantasy bingo readathon. It is a readathon hosted on Reddit. One of the prompts, I think, was to read from a character who is a bard. This series came up a lot. A lot of people enjoy this series. It follows a young girl named Rune, who would be one of the greatest bards her world has ever seen. So when I to like back up a brag that she is the greatest bard that there ever lived, she goes up on this hill and she makes a bargain with this ghost where she must play the entire night. And if she is able to keep him interested the entire night, she goes back to the village with like coins and stuff. But my reading experience with this really was a roller coaster. The novel feels to me like it is more a series of 3 novellas in one book, and I think the pacing is really stunted because of that. The synopsis that I just gave to you is what is provided on any sort of synopsis of this book, and I do not feel like it does this book any justice. The ghost aspect of the novel is really within like the first 100 pages of the book and does not have any real importance to the book after that, in my opinion. But I got over that once our main character Rune started traveling and working in the city, because I found that Lackey was really starting to develop this idea of gender presentation, church control, and class discrepancies. I was surprised and impressed that a novel from this time period, which was written in the 90s, would focus on this, and so I started to really enjoy the novel from there. But then again, the story changed. Like I said, it really felt like 3 different novellas, and it became a love story. And then again, it changed again by becoming this like political plot once they met another character. And so I just feel like each third of the novel could not feel more different from the other, and it did not feel cohesive to me. It felt like I was being whiplashed every 5 seconds. I wish I could have enjoyed it more because that first third was really stellar, and I wish we focused more on like this aspect of having to prove oneself, going into other towns, presenting as another gender, looking at these class discrepancies in regards to the Catholic Church. I thought all of that was so interesting. So it made the 2 last thirds of the book so disappointing. The next book on this list is We Are the Beasts by Gigi Griffiths. This follows a town where this beast is like stalking and attacking people in the night. These 2 girls use these attacks to their advantage in order to fake their own deaths and escape the village. Unfortunately, this was a pretty average read for me. While I can appreciate that this was written to be a feminist retelling from like an old tale, I think it was called The Beast of Gévaudan, it fell far from feeling like a historical novel. I tried to get past the more colloquial language that was being used within the book because I wanted to enjoy the themes that were being presented to me. And for these themes to work, unfortunately, the characters and the setting needed to feel more like we were in the 1700s. And so the colloquial language started to really grate on me the further I got into the book. Besides slight mentions here and there of the menageries and the lack of women's rights, I kept forgetting that the book was set during this time period of the 1700s. It could have very easily felt like it was being set today. I don't feel like it would have made much of a difference to have this retelling set in the 1700s like the original tale, which could, I guess, work as more of a critique of our current society rather than the book itself. But while I enjoyed reading from our main characters and appreciate the mission that they took on to further the plot, the story itself just didn't pull me in enough to really care about the book, so that's why it's on this list. The next book on this list is The Beauty of the End by Lawrence Tienstra, and this takes place in a modern version of our current society, and it follows what would happen if human beings are facing extinction. Charlie and her twin sister Maggie grow up in this world and decide to work for a government-led program in order to help stall humanity's extinction. This book I actually remember finding so incredibly boring, and that feeling is still like prevalent today. It took me over a month to read because I just hated picking it up, which was so disappointing to me because I found the presence of the book, this idea of humanity's extinction, to be really, really interesting. And the first third of the novel was really, really engaging. I love how it started feeling really dystopian. And as the first third of the novel follows those twin sisters in their youth, the child's point of view of this creation of a new government and this bleak future was really interesting. But then from there, it just continued to decline. The scope of what our author was working with felt extremely large, and I think that that's why there was a lot of holes that started to come to the surface of the plot. This could have all been fine, not great, but fine, if the ending of the book didn't make me so mad. So I'll put a little bit of spoilers here just to talk about the ending like in one or two sentences, but I absolutely hate when the childless woman of the book, who didn't want children in the first place, always didn't want children, they're not having kids for outside of their control purposes, ends up having kids in the book because she feels this new higher purpose in doing so. It invalidates, in my opinion, women's choices, and it feels so tone deaf to a story that's about humanity's extinction and the end of the world. It feels very like Adam and Eve, like a woman's only role is giving birth and like furthering humanity. I don't like it. I don't like it, and that's why it ended up on this list. The next book is How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days by K.M. Jackson. This follows a girl who believes Keanu Reeves is her soulmate, her ultimate love, and is determined to go on this road trip to follow Keanu Reeves as he's filming this movie, meet him, and get married to him. And who tags along but obviously her best friend. And I fear I am part of the group that did not enjoy this book. If you look at the ratings for this book, it is abysmal, and I can't disagree here. I was going into this like expecting a really silly, goofy, fun time based on both the title of the book and the synopsis of the book. Obviously, it sounds really silly. And in fact, I purchased this book because much like our main character, I have a soft spot for Keanu Reeves. However, despite expecting a messy romp, this unfortunately was not a good time. Primarily, I found our main character, Bethany Liu, to be incredibly immature. And yes, like she is obsessed with Keanu Reeves, and that in and of itself is a silly characteristic to have, but surprisingly, it's not her most immature quality. She's supposed to be 40 years old, but reads like she's early 20s, 18, 19 even. She has no motivation in her life aside from stalking her favorite actor, and I would forget how old she's supposed to be every time we were in her POV. Additionally, another aspect of the novel that really irked me were the different celebrities that were just casually being name dropped that Bethany Liu and the like real romantic interest True would meet on this voyage. It was cringy, and it oddly made the book feel even more unbelievable than it already was. The book ended exactly as I expected, while adding on this like mandatory and annoying miscommunication section, which was just adding to the awfulness of this book, or how annoyed I felt about this book. So it just fell flat overall. I don't think it was the most successful in what it was trying to do, which was to be fun. So overall, I had to agree with the people. We're now getting into like the top three. So the third book on the list and the third of my overall worst books of the year is Kill Creatures by Rory Powers. This is going to be my last Rory Powers. I don't think their books are for me, and I am not for them. This follows the story of a girl named Nan who the summer before her three friends disappeared in a like tragic accident. Coming upon the 1-year anniversary during this like tribute to the three girls, one of them comes back. Nan is very confused because she's pretty sure she killed all three of them. So listening to that premise, are you as intrigued as I was? Because I was very intrigued. And I think Rory Powers always has such intriguing premises, but I don't find they ever meet the expectations that at least I have for the books. I felt like the plot of this book was just so empty. I knew where the story was going. I easily predicted a couple of plot twists, and I just didn't find the book engaged me enough with the thrills for how predictable it was. I found the characters in the book to be really one-dimensional as well. Even our main character, Nan, whose POV we follow for the entirety of the book, was extremely forgetful and boring. Making her, on top of it, an unreliable narrator did nothing for me but just annoy me. So I think this one honestly is a skip for non-fans for sure, but fans of Rory Powers as well. I found this to be really weak. The penultimate book on this list is 11% by Maren Uthog. This follows a question of what if women were in charge of the entire world. It takes place in a new time, a time not so different from ours, except that all the men are gone. All but 11%, that is, the minimum required to avoid inbreeding. But they are safely under lock and key in spa centers for women's pleasure and procreation. And once again, I think the theme of this video overall is while I was excited to read this due to the premise, I am sort of at a loss for what I got. I kind of get what Yu Thog was trying to do with this book, but I wish it was made more clear to readers. I felt completely lost while reading. There are time skips, sometimes within the same page, and no real break in the flow of the novel, so it was often only through context clues that I would understand that we had gone into the character's past or we were in a flashback. This could possibly be a misstep with translation because this is a translated book, but it really brought me out of the narrative of the book because I was so confused very often. I do think Yu Thog was creative in what they were trying to portray, which is a future society where men are almost non-existent, and how generations later of women might perceive men in this case. And most of it made some sense to me, but I do think that the stereotypical expectation on gender norms were still present and they rendered on the side of like bioessentialism. I also feel like Yu Thog tried to be inclusive and include trans characters as well, but that too just felt like weird representation and again was falling into this idea of bioessentialism. So I don't know, it was a weird and confusing experience that I really didn't vibe with. So that's why it's like the number 2 on this list. But my least favorite book of the year is a twofold, and it is my experience with the Wheel of Time series. In 2025, I read 3 of the Wheel of Time books. 2 of them I ended up giving 1 star. I'm definitely in the slump of the Wheel of Time series. This is by Robert Jordan. It follows a group of kids who are sort of selected because one of them has the potential to be the Dragon Reborn. And the Dragon Reborn is a man who will have power that can will the magic of the world to either the good side or the dark side. And it is a constant battle that they are constantly facing as the Dragon Reborn gets reborn and reborn again and again. So this is just the latest iteration of the Dragon Reborn and his struggles between falling within the dark and the light. I hate the way Robert Jordan writes his books. I will say the first 4 books in the series I genuinely did enjoy, and it's the reason I'm sticking with these books because the last 3 books were written posthumously of Robert Jordan's death by Brandon Sanderson. And Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite authors. In this goal to read everything that Brandon Sanderson has ever written, alas, we are here. However, I don't think Robert Jordan is a very good writer. I think his book or his idea was interesting until it became this unnecessary expanse of books. And even Wheel of Time fans will say that the slog books, I don't know what chapters they are, but for me, it was definitely these 2, are the worst part of the series. Nothing really happens that's overtly necessary to the overall plot of the book. Could I have skipped them? Possibly, but I am a completionist, and that is my problem. So I am just listening to these 1-star books that are just so boring. Maybe 1 or 2 interesting things happen, but the same shit goes down. We have a problem here. Rand fixes it. Rand goes through some shit. Someone else fixes something. Someone gets kidnapped. Men do this. Women do that. Women are so confusing. Oh, I'm a boy and I don't understand how to do anything. Oh, wait, I have this magical power. Blah, 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 blah. And so despite continuing the series, I gave these 2 1 star. I will say what plays into this is also my experience of reading the Wheel of Time series has been so boring these last like 4 books. I'm hating the experience and I think it's making me hate the books more. So is this the books themselves or the experience itself of reading the entire Wheel of Time series? I can't tell you, but these are definitely my worst books of the year. So that's it. We've reached the end of my list of worst books of 2025. Please let me know down below if you've read any of them. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Let me know, but be nice about it. Of course, if you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, I do leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. Of course, you know, all of social media is currently being owned by billionaires and we are all part of the capitalist system. But as long as they are there and well, you can follow me. And of course, because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It does wonders for my channel, makes me feel really good. And that's it. I never know how to end these things. So I will see you next time with my best books of the year. Bye!